There's been lots of talk about what the Bears should do in this upcoming draft, but what are they actually going to do?
We're going to let you in on the rumors that we're hearing. That and more on this episode of the How Subtle Podcast. Huddle up! As always, I'm Rob Schwartz with Bear Goggles On. Tonight with me, I have Bob Weiss. How are you doing?
Huddle up, Rob. I'm doing great. Very happy to get to this episode. I mean, draft night is just maybe my favorite sports night of the year until maybe Bears start playing playoff games. But until then, draft night, it's where it's at for me. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, playoff games. We got to go all the way back to 2018 for that one. So it's
been a while.
Been a while. Draft day or draft time is also one of my favorite times of the year as well. And draft day, I will literally watch the movie Draft Day. For as bad as that movie is, as how unrealistic that movie is.
Classic.
It's my tradition. I will be working from home that day. My son has a track meet, so it's going to be real easy for me to watch it at home, get settled in, and I'm actually going to see you that night, so that'll be fun.
All right, looking forward to that. Yeah, we'll get together over at Justin's. We're all going to have a nice little get together. Big night for the Bears. So I guess why don't we just kind of get into it? Like, what are we actually expecting from the Bears for that first pick? What do you think we're hearing about that, Rob?
Yeah, so it's crazy because we've seen some things change over the last couple of weeks. So originally, from Gary, our insider, Gary Ross Rappaport, he's been sticking to the fact that if Will Campbell is there, Will Campbell is the guy. So if Will Campbell somehow falls to 10, he's the locked in guy. But we're also hearing that there's other names, right? So Jeanty is...
Ashton Jeanty's kind of in that same ballpark too, right? It's like Campbell or Jeanty are their guys. That's been a consistent messaging from Gary.
Yeah.
But then it's like kind of, if those guys aren't there, it's been just all
over the place, which falls in line with what we heard today. So, because there's a press conference with Ryan Poles, press conference with Ian Cunningham, and they kind of said the same thing. It's just kind of all over the place. So,
right now, some of the names that we actually have heard from Gary, right, is actually Jalon Walker, Shemar Stewart, which are two names that aren't necessarily on every Bear fan's radar. Mykel Williams is in there, and then Kelvin Banks, Tyler Warren, and Colson Loveland. And then Walter Nolan got thrown in there recently. So
he said he was kind of a dark horse.
Yeah. So of those names, I mean, which ones kind of surprised you the most, Rob?
Shemar Stewart.
Yeah.
Shemar Stewart for sure, just because to me, he's not a top 10 pick. I know he looks like a top 10 pick if you were to just walk by him in the locker room, see him out on the football field. But as soon as you throw on the tape, he just doesn't play like a top 10 pick. So seeing him in the talks worries me a little bit. Mm-hmm. Jalon Walker was a name that was used a little bit, a few weeks back, and he did impact my decision-making when I was making my consensus top 10, but also a guy that I personally wouldn't want at 10 unless, they can't trade back.
Yeah, so, I mean, both of those guys are the ones that stand out to me, too. And, I've kind of mentioned before, but I'm really trying to make it my mission as being on this show and getting a message out that, I'm not just going to say that, oh, well, the Bears did it, so I'm just going to blindly support it, right? So with Shemar Stewart in particular, no, you got to have more production. This is the epitome of that athlete that coaches think they're going to get their hand on and turn them into a football player. It's, obviously if they draft him, he's going to be in a Bears jersey and I'm going to be rooting for him and I want him to.
Yes.
But I'm not just going to blindly say that this is a good decision until I see the production start, right? But it's almost the flip with Jalon Walker because there actually is production there. There actually is a real football player there. You hear about these interviews, he says they're saying he's running these meetings like he's a defensive coordinator. He just knows everything. So this is one that I actually probably would get behind if they went that way. Linebacker / edge rusher. It sounds a lot like Micah Parsons. I know he doesn't quite have that same size, but after this year, we actually probably will have a starting linebacker spot open, right? So he kind of fits in there, and then you can continue as a pass rusher. So I'm more likely to get behind Jalon Walker than I am Shemar Stewart. But, we'll just have to see how that goes. I mean, we don't even really know who's going to be available at 10. I mean, if Campbell or Jeanty fall, no issue. We know what the Bears are going to do. But after that, there's a lot of directions they could go. Any other of these names you want to touch on, or should we?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing real quick, Colston Loveland, he's got some medical concerns, so that, that one is, to me, you have to know for sure that that's not going to be an issue for him. But he is the younger of the two when it comes to the tight ends, so that's kind of intriguing there. And I'm going to trust Ben Johnson knows how to find tight ends, just like he did with Sam Laporta. I like Walter Nolan too. Having him in there, I wouldn't be opposed to it, but again, he was in my top 10, so I shouldn't be mad about it. But I don't know. There's only a few names I'd be really excited about at 10. I'm really hoping that they find a way to trade back.
Yeah, and kind of a common theme with this, and both Poles and Cunningham touched about it, how there's just these pockets of players. I forget the exact word they use, but I don't really think you're going to be allowed to say players were reaches in this draft. There's guys who might look on somebody's list at number 24, 25, but could very reasonably be number 10, right? So even Walter Nolan might be down. I've seen him 28, 29 on some lists. Kelvin Banks, 24 on some lists. If that's the pick at 10, I'm not going to immediately say reach, because there's these evaluations of these players are just so close.
Except for Shemar Stewart.
That guy should be in the 30s, mid-30s.
To be honest, I wouldn't call it a reach if they somehow moved up from 39 and got him at 28, right? Then I'd be like, okay. I mean, you're taking a gamble, but he does look like Tarzan. Let's just hope he doesn't play like Jane.
I mean, there was this guy in the draft 2 or 3 years ago, Tyree Wilson, I think was his name, out of Texas Tech. Phenomenal athlete, long athlete. He had injury concerns, which Shemar Stewart doesn't necessarily have, but Tyree Wilson had production and injury concerns. But he somehow made it into the top 10. There's just these guys that the NFL just doesn't learn at all. And then, I'm just worried about
I just hope Chicago's not one of those teams that doesn't learn. Yeah. All right. Well, let's look at some stuff here when it comes to who could be available at 10, right? I'll throw up the slide.
Yeah, throw up the slide. Yeah, I mean, you look at mock drafts, all across all different publications now. There's very kind of consistent names at the. No, not this one. Consistent names.
Number one. Sorry,
going through the top 10. Now these 8 are basically, if you just go to 4 different sites and see what mock drafts are, you're going to see these names in almost every single one of them. This is just what the industry is just kind of falling in. At this point, it's almost kind of lazy, I think, that they're just saying these are what the top 8 are going to be, right?
Unless you're Mel Kiper, who just wants to make some noise, and who his most recent mock draft, I saw a headline for it. I didn't actually open it. Apparently, he put Shedeur Sanders at 1.
I mean, that's insane.
That's just clickbait.
That's just what are you even doing, Mel?
That's clickbait.
That's whatever. So obviously, if this happens, this is the conventional wisdom. The Bears aren't going to get Campbell or Jeanty. So then you get down to, all right, well, what are they going to do? But if I'm a betting man, I am saying there is absolutely zero chance that these exact 8 names in this exact order is exactly what's going to happen. I think there's a better chance Abdul Carter falls to 10 than there is these exact names go in that order. So that being said, there are some names here that might not go in that order and might fall, right? So how do we get Will Campbell to fall to 10? How do we get Ashton Jeanty to fall to 10? Is Mason Graham a chance to fall to 10? What do those iterations look like for that to actually happen? And we actually have had some smoke that Mason Graham might fall. I saw Adam Schefter said he's not a lock for the Jags, right? I watched another podcast the other day with Todd McShay, and his insider sources were saying, don't be simple-minded when it comes to the top 10 picks. And this, I think these 8 is being simple-minded. So this isn't going to be it. Why don't we take a look at some iterations here that might actually seem realistic to me anyway, and still get Campbell, Graham, or Jeanty to 10. Now, you guys looking at this, how reasonable might this be, or might this not be? Campbell does seem to be locked in on New England, or New England locked in on him. And a lot of it isn't necessarily because of the athlete. It's about himself and exactly the type of guys that the coach Vrabel wants to bring in.
Yep.
So that's kind of what it is. So if football takes over, and it's not just about you love the leader and all that Campbell is, well, then Jalon Walker could fit in that defense. They need defensive playmakers. He's flexible. He can go all over. So great. So Walker goes there instead of Campbell. And then you can reasonably, once Campbell starts falling, you can reasonably see all these other guys go ahead of him, right? And so now he falls to 10. Same thing with Graham. Now, I know a lot of people think he's just like a solid prospect, very high floor, but there's other people who think he's limited ceiling, right? He's not a future All-Pro. He's just a solid starter for forever. So if that's the opinions, then you start taking these guys with higher ceilings than Graham over him, right? And that's how Graham falls to 10. And then Jeanty, it's relying on the positional value of running back that would make him fall. So you take a look at everybody who would go ahead of Jeanty. They're all at these traditionally high value positions instead of Jeanty. So that might be how one of these three premium guys can actually fall to 10. So Rob, what do you think? How likely would any of these scenarios be?
So out of the three, I think Graham could be the one that hits the easiest. I think if somehow Graham slips past Jacksonville, right? Like they decide to go with either Jeanty or they take an offensive lineman, I could see Graham slipping. I don't see the Jets taking him. I don't see the Raiders taking him. Carolina maybe would be interested. New Orleans doesn't seem like a place that would need a defensive tackle like that badly. Like they have other positional needs that I think they would put over top of him.
New Orleans seems to just be the biggest wild card of them all. Have idea what direction they're going to go, and they don't always do things that make sense either.
Yep.
And it's just like they have needs everywhere. Like I have no idea what to read. New Orleans.
It's not listed here, but like you have Ted McMillan at Carolina there in the first one with the Campbell one. I could see them going receiver in New Orleans.
Sure. I wanted to make sure I got McMillan's name on there because he could go 5 to Jacksonville. I saw something where he could go 5 to Jacksonville. Like Trevor Lawrence has a better rapport with big receivers, so maybe they just bring him in Jacksonville.
Whether you like Greg Gabriel or not, whether you think he's a clown or not, he still does have some connections within the league. And he did put out a tweet today saying that, and this goes along the lines of Adam Schefter saying Mason Graham isn't a lock to the Jags. He said that according to what he's hearing, it's going to be an offensive player, whether that's Jeanty, whether that's McMillan, whether that's Tyler Warren, whether it's an offensive lineman. The fact is it sounds like it's either they're looking to move back or they're going offense.
I could see that. And you see what at Jacksonville 3, I did try to get them an offensive player each time because I think when you go out and hire an offensive coach like Liam Cohen in first year, you hired an offensive coach to get your number 1 overall pick quarterback going. And then you draft something on the other side of the ball, right? So it makes some sense for them to go offense in that regard. The problem is it's this year's draft, and who are the premium players other than really Jeanty to be worth the number 5 pick. So it's really interesting. It's kind of some polls open his press conference with today about it's going to be wild and they're going to be prepared. So obviously 2 of these 3 scenarios lead the Bears to address the trenches at number 10. So I think that's going to make a lot of people happy. But Rob, when you hear the term build through the trenches, what do you think that means?
Yeah, so when I build through the trenches, it means, again, I hate using them, but the perfect example is the Philadelphia Eagles. The fact that you're going to continuously draft offensive and defensive linemen, whether you really need them or not, right? I mean, they just seem to have these guys developing in the wind or waiting in the wings to just kind of come in and play as soon as one of their older veterans move on or they decide they can't pay a person. Mekhi Becton is gone, and now I don't think they're going to miss him at all, to be honest. I just don't. They just seem to be that type of team.
To come in. Yeah.
You remember when Dallas used to be known as the offensive line? That's now Philadelphia, right? Mm-hmm. And they have the defensive line to go with it as well. So I think you're going to be taking swings on at least one offensive lineman and one defensive lineman, regardless of position, within your first 3 rounds every year. That's just kind of where I feel like you have to do it. I don't know if that's really what we've seen from Ryan Poles.
Yeah. So I'm going to go a definition a little slightly different. I think building through the trenches is just as much about building your depth and the floor of those position groups as it is building the high end talent of those position groups, if that makes sense. Like I'm not saying you, like, in order to build through the trenches, you don't have to have the all pro left tackle. Now it certainly helps, right? But I think building through the trenches makes sure that absolutely in no circumstance is your offensive line or defensive line a weakness of your team. Now, how do you actually do that? Now it's more about just not ignoring it in the draft than it is making a priority. And how do you really do that? Well, you take advantage of guys that fall. So Jalen Carter, top level talent in the entire draft, falls to 10, that falls to 9, you take him.
Right.
Nolan Carter somehow falls all the way out of the first round. What do? You take him, right? You're in the middle of the first round. You're opening up a new tier. Nobody really stands out to you. What do? You take Jordan Davis, right? Like, these are the things that you do to just always be addressing your offensive and defensive lines to make sure it never, ever becomes a weakness. And I think it's pretty fair to say that last year, the offensive line and defensive line for the Bears were weaknesses, right? So why don't we take a look and see
what's interesting, though, is last year they were, but it's not like he hasn't made attempts.
Right. So that's the thing. Like, has Ryan Poles just never, or the offensive and defensive lines a problem because he doesn't address them, right? Or is it because he's trying and failing, right? And I think that that's a very interesting conversation, because I think in 2002, even though you could say 5 of his 11 picks were trench players, he failed to address the trenches in 2002, right?
Yeah, I mean, he lucked into Braxton Jones. As many people want to get rid of Braxton Jones, like, he is become a good player. Like, he's the Charles Leno of this team, where everyone wanted Charles Leno to be gone, and then left tackle position became a weakness, right? Braxton Jones basically is that same guy. He's a good left tackle. He's not bad. He's not great, but he's good. And you got lucky that you got him in that 5th round, because if I recall, I'm blanking on the name, but there was a left tackle in place that year that he ended up winning out that job. Why can't I think of who that was?
Oh, Brett. Yeah, I know what you're saying. It wasn't obviously any established veteran, but it was an old Iowa player, that left tackle that they brought in, and he ended up being.
Yeah,
I'm
blanking.
I know what you're saying. He stepped in from day one. So I'm not going to say it was pure luck, like a dart throw. Like, they scouted him. They took a special trip to go work him out. Like, it wasn't just like, completely luck. They did scout him, but again, you're not building through the trenches with 5th rounders. You're not supposed to be depending on 5th rounders to develop the trenches. Now, I'm going to go a little maybe unconventional and say that I think Demarcus Robinson is a good pick, was a successful pick. These 5th round picks aren't supposed to be starters. Braxton Jones, I guess you're lucky that he turned out to be what he was, but like Dominique Robinson has been a solid special teams contributor. He's on your 45-man roster week in and week out on a 5th round rookie contract. Like, those are the types of guys that you get in the 5th round. And that's, that does, I guess, affect the floor, but that's not enough if that's your first pick to adjust the defensive line there. So I think 2002 was a strikeout in terms of I'm sorry, I shouldn't even say a strikeout. It's really not even stepping up to the plate in terms of addressing and building through the trenches. 2003 is different. I would say that is absolutely addressing 100%. The trenches. 3rd round pick that's a swing and a miss. Okay, you don't really want to be swinging and missing on 3rd round picks. But the first 2, you did the right thing. Like, you were opening up a new tier at number 10. So you went and got the trench guy that you liked. Okay, so good for you. Way to do that. And they didn't pass on some elite player to do it either, right? I mean, Bijan Robinson was already gone, so they went in the trenches, right? Javon Dexter, nice find in the second round. We can argue about what his ceiling actually is, but that's a solid starter on the defensive line that you use a second round pick for. So way to go there. You got anything else on 2023?
Well, I mean, some people will say you did pass on an elite player by letting Jalen Carter go to the Philadelphia Eagles, but
correct. But it still would have been
my argument is they're both trenches, and
right.
Imagine this offensive line last year without Darnell Wright. What's more important, Darnell Wright with Javon Dexter, who I know I'm higher on than most, who performed very well, or just Jalen Carter and Larry Borum starting for you at right tackle every week?
Yeah.
Like, that's the situation they were in.
We can't act like there weren't extenuating circumstances with Jalen Carter.
Correct. But also, we've talked about it like best player available, but that's also like if you have these two in the same tier and you have a higher need at right tackle than you do at defensive tackle, you go right tackle. And that's what they did, even though Jalen Carter had a great year last year. Darnell Wright did too. Even in his rookie year, he was very solid, and he improved upon it last year. He's one of the better tackles in the league. I don't have a problem with it.
Right. Right. And then, 2024, I would say, is just another, like, did you really even step up to the plate? Like, Karan Amagaji, injured tackle out of Harvard. Like, that's, I think that could be a fine pick if you already had an established good starting five, and you could actually, like, count on a couple of years of development for him. Like, that's fine.
He would fit your definition. He would fit your definition that you said earlier. Like, had this line been in position, maybe what it is right now today.
Correct. Right? And that's why I'm an advocate for the kid, Charles Grant out of William & Mary in the third round. Same type of thing, because you kind of already got an established line. And then Austin Booker is, again, we just talked about fifth round. Like, that's fine if you already have a clearly established defensive line. But if you're counting on a guy like Austin Booker to come and be a clear contributor right away, well, that's not necessarily building through the draft. So I think we established that 3 draft classes, one of which you could say this regime has built through the trenches. So do we think that this is going to indicate where they're going in this draft? Are they going to address the trenches in this draft?
I think they are. And I think, I take that back. Let me back that up. I think they are, in the sense that they know that the depth of this draft, like the quality of this draft, is within the trenches. And I think they know that, like, they have 4 picks in the top 75. So I think, I might be getting ahead of myself here on where we wanted to go, but I think at least 2 out of those 4 are probably going to be on one, whether it's both on offensive line, both on defensive line, whatever, at least 2 out of those 4 are going to be in the trenches. I think having Ben Johnson here is going to play a little bit of a different part in it as well. But look, they went out and spent a lot in free agency to rebuild the trenches. So it's like, it's how much can they now attack it in the draft? This goes into where you were talking. Now they need to figure out where they can, find developmental guys, where they can put somebody in place. Like in the draft that you and I both had, an offensive lineman that could step in and play a tackle for a little bit and then kick inside next year. They talk about a Joe Thuney extension, but what if that doesn't happen? Right. So then you have a guy who can kick back in.
Or what if he gets hurt?
Exactly.
13 years old. Jonah Jackson has like a history of injuries. Like you need guys. So I'm kind of with you. I do think that they will draft some players on the offensive and defensive line. How many of them? Maybe we'll get into that later. But I don't necessarily know that this draft class is going to look like 2023 did, where it's like, wow, look at them. They made a concerted effort to build the trenches. So we'll just have to see.
Real quick, if you want the Bears to build through the trenches, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit that comment section. Let us know. We talked about where we think that things might go with the draft. Let us know what you think. Maybe you think completely different. Hit that comment section. We love to keep that conversation going and build this community.
Yeah. So another way to kind of help you build through the trenches is maybe move up and down the draft board to get where you want to go to get these trench players. So what are we expecting the Bears? Are they just going to have these where they got 7 picks currently, 4 in the top 72? Is that just what they're going to do, or are they going to move up and down, Rob?
I think they're going to make a trade. With one of their first 3 picks. Personally, I would prefer that they move back. However, according to Gary tonight, there's been a lot of news or rumors about Jacksonville wanting to move down. And then there's also rumors about them wanting Jeanty. And I just feel like they're trying to entice people to move up. But it sounds like it might be working. And if that's the case, I might be a little upset with Ryan Poles. I love the player. I've been on record many times. I don't like the idea of trading up for Jeanty. It will obviously depend on what is what is given to move up for him. I think he obviously is the top tier running back in this class. It's just, I like Omarion Hampton. I like Caleb Johnson. I like Travion Henderson. So to me, if you're giving up a lot just to move up 5 picks, I have a problem with it. I'll wait to reserve that judgment to see what happens if it does.
You just got to see what the actual cost is. I'm doing dances if Jeanty falls to 10 and the Bears drafted. Right?
100%.
That's fine. You're getting the best offensive non-Hunter player in the draft, at number 10. Great, sign me up. I'm not going to be happy about moving up. I want to see what the cost is. If the cost is what you normally cost to move up from 10 to 5, hell no, absolutely not. Right. But we're just gonna have to see what actually happens, right? A couple other interesting trade scenario you brought up was, Cincinnati still hasn't signed Trey Hendrickson to a deal. So an interesting kind of throw out there, the Cincinnati package Trey Hendrickson and 17 to move up to 10, and the Bears move down to 17. Where are we at there?
I'm 100% on board with that because I think you can end up with Omarion Hampton at 17. So 100% on board with that. You're obviously not going to go defensive end in the first round, but you still probably pick one up in the second or third because you got to keep building, right? You got to keep building. So
yeah, I don't know if I'm going Omarion Hampton actually, because I still think the difference between Omarion Hampton and Ashton Jeanty is bigger than the difference between Omarion Hampton and say Travion Henderson or something. So I'm probably still looking at the second round for running back, but it brings a wide receiver into play. It brings one of the left tackles into play. Maybe that is where Josh Connerly goes, right? Yeah. Maybe Kelvin Banks has fallen to 17 and you do that there. But that's definitely something that I would absolutely consider if that's a real thing and not just something some sports writers brought up. But
it was a Sports Illustrated article.
Yeah.
So
yeah. But I would also say, I don't even know if it's necessarily reading between the lines with Poles and Cunningham's presser today, but on 3 or 4 separate occasions, they certainly seem to indicate that moving down the draft board is ideal. They talked about, pockets of players. They talked about usually the drop off into the second to third round is sharper than it is, which makes me think that they pick up a couple extra picks, move down there. They did talk about a couple clouds of players. So maybe there's a cloud of player towards that third round that they like the value there. And then I also think, just me looking at it, I don't know what they're thinking. I think there's one in the 5th round. So if they can get another fifth round pick or 2, maybe you're drafting a couple players there. So I'm really hoping that they trade down. When we did our ideal mocks, all 3 of us traded down, right? We all want extra picks. Who doesn't want extra picks? So it was nice to hear them say that today. Certainly strongly hint that they do. So I'm really hoping that they do. Well, should we get into some predictions here, Rob?
Yeah, let's crank these out.
Okay.
All right, let's just throw them out. I'll read them off, and then I'll let you go first, and I'll rebuttal or give my prediction next. So who do you think the Bears are going to draft in the first round? Doesn't matter where in the first round. Who do you think is going to be that first round pick?
I think it's going to be Mykel Williams. I truly do. I think it's going to be Mykel Williams at 10. I just think that there's too many things that are going to line up for that to happen. It is a name that, Gary has brought to our attention. I don't think that Campbell and Jeanty fall. And And I see him as being the player that just fits the system, going to be able to play right away because of that run defense, and then he can learn and grow into that pass rush.
Yeah. I'm going to go, and I'm not really thrilled with it. I'm actually just going to go Kelvin Banks. I feel like there's just too much flame out there to wind to the fire that's just been coming out, and it just seems to kind of be similar to what had happened with Darnell Wright. There was a lot of just uptick right before the draft that he was the guy, and I feel like that's kind of been the case here with Kelvin Banks, and I'm not thrilled about it, but I'll get myself on board.
I'm totally understanding that it would be a little disappointing, but it would be impossible to be mad at, right? Like, it's just like, he's a solid football player. We talk about, I just want solid football players. And we just talked about what does building through the trenches mean. When you're opening up a new tier and you're not sure what to do, just go get the guy that you think is the most solid trench player. Right.
Yep.
So you can't really get too upset about that. So do the Bears draft a running back in this class? And if they do, where?
100% they do. And it's going to be with one of those second round picks.
Okay. I'm also thinking 100% they do. But I'm actually thinking that that's going to be in the 5th round. I think running back is incredibly deep. You're going to be able to get functional guys. I don't have the name in front of me, but there's a kid out of Auburn who just, if things don't work out earlier in to get the guy that you like, this seems to be Jarquez Hunter's his name. Like, he just seems to be the type of guy that just is going to, just get the 200 carries for 800 yards up the gut every time. Let DeAndre Swift kind of run his lightning. And so it's just something like that. So I definitely say yes, and my prediction will be the 5th round to get a running back.
All right. The Bears currently have 7 picks. How many do you think they will end up with by the end of the draft?
I'm going to say 9. Remember the 2022 draft, what they started off with 6, it ended up with 11. So, like, if this is another draft where the floodgates just open, people realize that the Bears are open for business, then it could happen multiple times, multiple trade downs. The same pick gets traded down multiple times. I'm going 9.
So I'm going to go with 8. I think they're going to acquire 2, but I think they're going to end up giving 1 away.
Okay.
I think they typically he gets into those later rounds and he tends to move up to get players that he wants. And I just feel like he might have to give up one of those 7th rounders or something in order to make that happen. So.
Okay. And so you got 8 picks. How many of those will be in the trenches, offensive or defensive line?
Yeah, I'm going to go with my ideal draft. I'm going to go with 4. I was originally going to say 3. I'm going to go 4.
All right. I got 9 picks in my prediction. I'm going to say 4 of them are on the trenches. Now, we got 2 7th round picks right now. So you drafted a defensive lineman in the 7th round. Does that really count? But yeah, 9 picks, 4 of them will be in the trenches. And then last pick, of those 8, how many will be impact players in 2025?
Yeah, I'm going to go with, can I say 3.5? It's like an over-under. I'm torn. I want to say 4, but I'm nervous about 4 because 4 out of 8 would be like a very impressive draft, right?
Yeah.
I think I'm going to lean 3. I think it's more realistic. I think when you have 4 picks, though, within the first 72, and if I expect you to trade and get a second, another pick within the top 75, top 100, 3 out of those 4 better be impact players. I'm going to go with 3.
So I'm going to go 4 of my 9, and it's just because, I think that you can make an impact by just being a rotational player on the defensive line, right? Like, we had guys playing 30% of the snaps on the defensive line last year who were just signed off the street in the middle of the year, right? So if your 5th round pick now is doing that instead of that, I think that's making an impact. Playing on special teams, a 4-phase special teamer, right, is making an impact. So I'm going to say 4 out of 9.
I'm going to back up. I'm going to say 4 as well. And the reason I'm saying 4, and Dr. Truth is going to love this, because one of those picks is either going to be a kicker, which I want, who's going to take over for Cairo Santos, or it's going to be that long snapper in the 7th round. those guys have to make an impact.
That's right. That's right. Got to. All right. Well, so this was a lot of fun, Rob. We're going through this. I don't actually know what's going to happen. I can't wait to find out.
They don't even know.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to the guys running the show go up behind a podium today and say it's going to be wild, guys. We have no idea. We have absolutely no idea. So yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a great night.
It's going to be a lot of fun. We can talk more about how much we love the draft on Sunday, and we'll get into what happened when we record after the first 3 rounds. Only 3 rounds.
Yeah, that's right.
Not 3 rounds, 3 days.
3 days, 3 days, 7 rounds, 3 days. Maybe whatever. We'll see if we do something Thursday night, but yeah, go from there. So, all right, Hellas Huddlers, you guys enjoy the draft as much as we do. Hit that like button, comment below what your predictions are. Who do you think the Bears are taking in the first round? And then we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Until then, bear down, claws up.